Good morning, everyone, and a Happy New Year. And thank you, Robert, for that introduction and your colleague there. First of all, I'd like to thank people for being here today. As Evan and I, as co-rapporteurs, present our draft report as we begin to formulate the position of the European Parliament on this important directive, which I have no doubt will be very strong indeed. Evan has begun by giving you a good overview of what we have sought to add or strengthen. We have put in 179 amendments to this directive at this point. Now, like Evan, I want to join with her in thanking the NGOs and all of those frontline workers who do so much to help victims right across Europe and do extraordinary work and have made many submissions to us. And we have done our very best to take account of the key points from the submissions. Let me just reiterate, although I do know that everybody in this room is well aware of these statistics, but they do bear repeating because they're actually hard to believe. Every 10 years, a city the size of Marseille, Zagreb or Amsterdam disappears from the face of the earth as 850,000 women are murdered globally in what we call femicide, killing a woman because she is a woman. How extraordinary when you put it in that context. In 2015, 9 out of 10 rape victims and 8 out of 10 sexual assault victims in the Union were women. 99% of those who were imprisoned for such crimes were men. 1 in 3 women in the EU aged 15 or over has experienced some form of physical or sexual violence. So it is quite extraordinary, Chairs, that we've got to this point without having a directive on this issue. But as I elaborate on some of the issues we're now facing, I think we'll understand why. But to echo the words of our President from last November, stop killing women. This is what we are up against, and that is the challenge that this directive has to meet. Yet, and I want to alert members to this, despite the prevalence of this violation of human rights, there are some who fail to see the urgency. And there are many who call into question from the member states the legal basis on which the offences of rape and female genital mutilation are built. To my mind, rape and female genital mutilation are absolutely sexual exploitation. Now, this directive is based on the legal premise is sexual exploitation. So you have to think about what actually constitutes sexual exploitation. And there is resistance from quite a surprising number of member states to the legal basis on which this directive is being built, because rape is not a Euro crime. But I do want, not legally and technically in there, but of course it should be because it's cross-border and so on. But I do want to make the point, and very seriously make the point, that if we hollow out this directive, for example, and take away rape and female genital mutilation, that is not an option. And the European Parliament will not accept that. And I want to send a message very clearly to the Council today. And I also want to put everybody here and our NGOs and civil society on notice in relation to this. And I've no doubt the European Parliament will send a very strong message, and their representatives, that we will fight for a very strong directive that tackles the issue of rape. So I think let's be absolutely clear about that. It's simply not an option to remove it from the directive. We know that this directive must apply to all Europeans, and I particularly welcome, and I think the Commission have done terrific work on this directive actually. I think their definition of a victim as meaning any person is certainly to be welcomed. We certainly welcome, of course, the principle of non-discrimination, and we further emphasise that while recognising that women are disproportionately affected by such crimes, that of course the principle of non-discrimination applies right across this directive. So a nuanced approach that takes account of all realities is possible, and we will do our utmost to strike that balance and ensure that it is legally sound. So a couple of areas that we have included that were not there, and Evan has mentioned quite a few of them. For example, the first one, the inclusion of wording on psychological violence in Amendments 65 and 66. This echoes the language of the Istanbul Convention. And of course, what we want to make sure in this directive is that its standards meet at the very least the standards of the Istanbul Convention, which is really the gold star. So I think psychological violence is often the first weapon used by an offender. And of course, we have to make sure that it's captured within this directive, because it is part of the continuum of violence. It's not a standalone offence in this context, as there is no legal basis for it, but we have incorporated it. We've also strengthened language on sexual harassment in the workplace in Amendments 144 and 145. When I read the proposal first, I was glad to see that the unique case of sexual harassment in the workplace was mentioned. But I think we can do more to identify this for what it is. It's a workplace issue. It's a health and safety issue. So we have used the Directive on Safety and Health of Workers. We have put forward proposals to strengthen action in this area with due regard to the ILO Convention 190. And we look forward to getting contributions from our colleagues on the EMPL committee. Finally, we have put in aggravating circumstances where there's the perpetration of an offence against a public representative, a journalist or a human rights defender. And of course, this is about supporting our democracy. I'm conscious of time, so very briefly, we're saying that notes from counselling sessions cannot be included. I won't elaborate on that. And we want qualitative as well as quantitative data. So we have, I think, presented a
Mike.
Oh, I've cut off. Okay, didn't realise that. Okay, thank you.
We thank you. We thank both of our rapporteurs from the LIBE committee, Mrs. Inser, from FEMM, Mrs. Fitzgerald. And now let's proceed to hear from the shadows, but just announcing that just to begin with this new year, we have a especially busy working session today. We have a vote in the LIBE committee by 12:30, if I am correct. And before we have a hearing with the Spanish Justice Minister, so we should mind the timing because we got a busy agenda to go through before those final points and the votes we're having this morning. Now let's proceed to hear from the shadows. I suggest that they use 2 minutes each, getting started with the co-rapporteurs of the LIBE committee. EPP co-rapporteur is Nathalie Colleen Österli. Is she there?
I'm actually speaking for her, if you don't mind. Yes.
You will make her point.
Yeah, there seemed to be a problem with the microphones.
No, because when we press it here, then your mic is being turned off. So it's up to us. I'm sorry.
It's your fault. Okay. First of all, she makes the point that 7 women die every day in Europe because of violence committed against them by their partner or ex-partner. In order to eradicate this burden, we must duplicate at the European level the Spanish model for combating violence against women. The future European directive shall focus exclusively on the protection of women and children. Our work should not be motivated purely by a purely ideological approach. Instead, I believe we need to work together on 4 concrete axes. The first is prevention. In each member state, we need to provide information and raise awareness. 2, support. Every woman, regardless of their geographical or social origins, shall be able to obtain information via physical or digital contact points and have access to a one-stop shop, providing comprehensive care, shelters, legal, social, medical, economic and administrative support. The European 112 hotline on domestic violence, available 24/7 in all languages, must be set up. All professionals must be trained. Specialised police officers and judges and a platform gathering data on victims must be created to facilitate the exchange of information between various stakeholders. Number 3, protect. Every situation of violence is different and the response must be adapted to the specific risks and needs of victims. Each member state must be able to issue protection orders quickly, provide victims with special phones in case of danger and offenders with anti-approach bracelets. 4, sanctioning. The legislation of the member states are heterogeneous. We must therefore harmonise them. Firstly, by creating a common definition for certain acts. What is considered as rape in France must be considered the same in Bulgaria. Secondly, by ensuring that certain forms of violence are punishable in each member state, which is not the case today, particularly in the case of forced marriage or sharing of intimate images. Finally, by establishing a set of sanctions for all these acts. Thank you.